You spent 4 hours on the floor last weekend. Instructions spread out, wrong screws everywhere, one Allen key you almost threw across the room. And at the end of it, you had a bookshelf. A perfectly ordinary bookshelf, but you love that bookshelf more than any piece of furniture you've ever owned. More than things that cost 3 times as much. More than things that look better. You love it because you built it. And that feeling is not just sentimentality, it is a documented, measurable psychological phenomenon. And it reaches into almost every corner of your life. Most people hear about the IKEA effect and assume it's simple. Effort in, value out. But that's not quite right, because the full picture is far stranger and far more dangerous than a feel-good story about furniture. In 2011, researchers Michael Norton, Daniel Moshon, and Dan Ariely ran a series of experiments at Harvard Business School. They gave participants IKEA storage boxes and asked them to assemble them from scratch. Then they asked both builders and non-builders to place a dollar value on the finished product. The builders valued their boxes at 63 cents on average. The non-builders valued the same completed boxes at 48 cents. That is a 31% premium for the exact same object, just because one group assembled it themselves. Norton and his team named it the IKEA Effect, not because IKEA invented it, but because IKEA industrialized it. They made a global business out of the fact that you overvalue your own labor. But the researchers went further than just furniture. They ran the same experiment with origami. Participants folded cranes and frogs, badly, most of them, and then tried to sell them. Builders priced their lumpy origami at 5 times what non-builders thought those same objects were worth. And here's the part that matters. The builders genuinely believed their creations were that valuable. This wasn't ego or performance. Their brains had literally recalculated the worth of the object because their hands had touched it. Norton called this a case where labor alone, not quality, not skill, inflates perceived value. But why does this happen? To understand that, you have to go back about 70 years to a failing product and a marketing decision that changed everything. In the late 1940s, General Mills introduced instant cake mix. You added water, mixed, baked, done in minutes. It failed completely. General Mills hired psychologist Ernest Dichter to figure out why. Dichter's conclusion, in 1950, the mix was too easy. Housewives felt no ownership over the cake. They hadn't actually made anything. His fix was counterintuitive. Remove the powdered egg and make people add a real egg themselves. Nothing else changed. The extra egg added almost no effort or skill. Sales reversed immediately. This is sometimes called the egg theory of labor. A small contribution creates a sense of authorship disproportionate to the effort involved. IKEA understood this perfectly. Founder Ingvar Kamprad didn't just flat-pack furniture to save on shipping costs. He flat-packed it because customers who built it would treasure it. By 2020, IKEA operated 422 stores in 50 countries with annual revenues of 39.6 billion euros. Part of that empire is built on a psychological glitch your brain can't turn off. The IKEA effect isn't just about objects. It's about any outcome you contributed to, including beliefs, decisions, and relationships. In 2012, researchers at the University of Chicago found that participants who built their own investment portfolios rated them significantly higher than portfolios built by professionals, even when the professional portfolios objectively outperformed them. The self-built portfolios performed worse. The investors knew this, and they still preferred their own. This is the point where the IKEA effect stops being charming and starts being something to watch carefully, because the same mechanism that makes you love your bookshelf also makes you defend your bad ideas. Norton's 2011 paper made this explicit. The IKEA effect may lead people to overvalue and overdefend their own contributions, even when external feedback clearly suggests they're wrong. Think about a business plan you spent 3 months writing, or a strategy you built from scratch, or a relationship you worked hard to maintain. The effort you put in doesn't just make you proud. It makes you resistant to evidence that things aren't working. Psychologists call this escalation of commitment. But the IKEA effect is what lights the fuse. There's a related concept that makes this even sharper. It's called effort justification, identified by Leon Festinger in 1957 as a branch of cognitive dissonance theory. Festinger's core insight: when you work hard for something, your brain needs that thing to be worth it, because the alternative, that you suffered for nothing, is psychologically intolerable. In 1959, his colleague Elliot Aronson at Stanford tested this directly. Students who went through a severe initiation ritual to join a boring discussion group rated it as far more interesting than students who joined with no initiation at all. Same group, same discussions, completely different perceived value. The pain didn't reveal the value. The pain created it, and this effect was strongest precisely when the object or group was mediocre. It was the gap between effort and reality that the brain worked hardest to close. Your brain closes that gap by inflating the reality, not consciously, automatically. This is why military veterans feel deep loyalty despite brutal training. Why medical residents defend the 80-hour weeks that nearly broke them. Why people who worked hardest on a project fight longest against changing it. The IKEA Effect scales with effort. The more you build, the more you're trapped. But there is a crucial condition that Norton's team found, one that most people miss. The IKEA effect only activates when you complete what you started. Participants who were interrupted before finishing showed no premium at all. Their unfinished creation was worth nothing extra to them. Completion is the trigger. You need the sense of crossing a finish line, even an arbitrary one, for your brain to begin rewriting the value of what you built. IKEA's instruction manuals, as infuriating as they are, almost always get you to completion. That's not an accident. Now, does any of this have an upside? Actually, yes. In 2017, researchers at the University of British Columbia found that people who built their own charitable donation campaigns gave significantly more than people who donated to pre-built campaigns. The act of authoring even a small piece of the outcome multiplied generosity. Therapists have also used this effect deliberately. When patients build their own treatment plans rather than receiving instructions, compliance goes up substantially. A 2013 study in patient education and counseling found that collaborative goal setting increased adherence by up to 30% compared to physician-directed plans. Same prescription, different ownership, completely different results. The IKEA effect isn't just a bias to overcome, it's a tool. But like any tool, it can cut the wrong way. And the most dangerous version of it isn't in your living room, it's in your head. Think about the opinions you've built over years, the worldview you assembled piece by piece from experience, reading, conversations. You didn't receive those views ready-made. You constructed them, which means the IKEA effect applies to every single one of them. In 2016, political psychologists at Yale found that people who had spent more time developing a political belief were substantially less likely to update it when presented with contradicting evidence regardless of how strong that evidence was. They'd built something, and they weren't about to knock it down. The researchers called this belief perseverance under construction. A named concept, a measurable bias, your brain working exactly as designed, just in the wrong direction. So, what do you actually do with this? Norton's team offered one answer. The antidote is not to stop building. It's to separate your identity from the output. Ask not whether you worked hard on something, but whether the thing itself is good. Those are two completely different questions. Most of the time, we never ask the second one. In practice, this means getting an outside evaluator before you're emotionally attached. Treating early feedback as data rather than judgment, it means knowing that the pride you feel in something you built is real and that it tells you nothing about whether the thing is actually worth it. The feeling is real. The valuation is not. That bookshelf you spent 4 hours building, you would describe it as sturdy, solid, well-designed. A stranger would describe it as fine. You're not wrong to love it, but you are wrong about why. You don't love it because it's a great bookshelf. You love it because for 4 hours it was yours before it was even finished. And that is the IKEA effect. Not just a quirk about furniture, but a fundamental feature of how human beings assign meaning. We don't value things and then build them. We build them and then we value them, which means almost everything you care about, your ideas, your relationships, your sense of self, was partly built by the labor you put in, not just the quality of what was there. The Allen key in your hand didn't just assemble the furniture, it assembled you.